questions that Deputy Griffin asked with regard to Deborah Day's report.
Well, actually, I had answered. I think Deputy Griffin had temporarily left the room at that time. But one of the questions was who was involved, or how was it decided that was included? And my answer was that RTE appointed a company called Evershade Sutherland, and Evershade Sutherland was picked by RTE. They had terms of reference. They did what was called a desktop review. They set themselves up in RTE, and they had a checklist whereby they went through everyone within the organisation. We had no involvement in that. We did have an involvement in campaigning for an appeals process, and that's where the senior counsel came in. But a measure of the difficulty we had was that RTE sought to deny people the right to be accompanied by a trade union official at those appeals, and we secured the right of representation in relation to that. One of the difficulties we have had, and it relates to Deputy Munster's comments earlier, which surprised me a bit because she would have been aware of it, is that under competition law, and we have spent many years coming in here looking for the right to come that, it was an offence for trade unions to represent freelance workers. And in fact, a SIP2 official was threatened with jail on the steps of the court for doing that. So we didn't have a right to represent people. When RTE forced people to act as sole trader, anyone over 30,000 pays VAT. The implication of that is that nails down further their status as a sole trader and denies them access to the right of the Workplace Relations Commission and the right to representation. In relation to the figure that's been talked about, the 700 or whatever under scope, I think you really need to bring in RTE and to drill down that, because scope's determination includes anyone who actually might act as a contributor in RTE, including someone who is a sports commentator and happens to be an auctioneer or a bank manager, someone who makes something once or twice a week. They're in a very different position from the people who we represent. And I actually would like to see granular detail, and I would like to see RTE and Scope dealing with this as a matter of urgency. This can't allow to drag on for 10, 15 years. But I do think I'd like to see a greater examination of those figures that RTE are talking about. And I think it is absurd, to reiterate my point earlier, Senator, that the state broadcaster comes in crying poverty while simultaneously lining the pockets of lawyers. Doesn't make sense.